I didn't ask his name. I didn't ask if he knew mine. I stood there with the door still half open, and I let her walk past me like I wasn't even part of the story anymore. That's the part one keep coming back to. Not what she said, not what he did, just the fact that I didn't say a single word. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shock. It was something worse, recognition. I knew. Somewhere in the marrow of my bones, I already knew. The way she closed the drawer quieter than usual. The way her charger was always in her bag instead of plugged into the kitchen wall like before. The way she laughed, not less, just differently. And still, I let it all happen. I told myself, maybe it's just a phase. Maybe the silence was just routine. Maybe the new perfume wasn't new. Maybe the nights she stayed late at work were real. Maybe the guy standing outside wasn't what I thought. But none of that was true. And I knew at the moment she said she wouldn't be home till morning, without blinking. Not angrily. Not guiltily. Just factually. Like saying, I'll pick up bread. Like her absence was already accepted by both of us. And here's the thing. I didn't argue. I just nodded. I stepped aside. She walked out. And he, the man with steady eyes and a car that didn't have a single scratch, didn't even look at me. He opened her door, she stepped in, and they drove off like I was the neighbor waving from a lawn chair. It's strange what you notice after something like that. I remember standing in the hallway for so long that the light on the thermostat dimmed. I remember my foot going numb because I never shifted my weight. I remember the dog next door barking for what felt like an hour. But I don't remember what I felt. Not clearly. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, took out the orange juice, and drank it straight from the bottle. I don't even like orange juice. She does. Or did. There are so many questions I could have asked. But I didn't ask anything. And now, 3 days later, I still haven't. I think I'm afraid that if I start, I won't be able to stop. There's an empty spot near the window now. That's where her plant used to sit, some kind of tropical thing with long leaves that draped like ribbons. I never learned the name. I told her it looked like it belonged in a dentist's office. She said it made the room feel intentional. I don't know when she took it. It wasn't in her hands the night she left. It wasn't on the seat of the car when she pulled away. But it's gone. And not just moved. There's no ring of dust, no indent in the carpet. It's like the space was never filled to begin with. That part bothered me more than I want to admit. Not the leaving, the cleaning. It meant she planned it. She didn't just go. She edited her exit. That night, after the car disappeared into the streetlight blur, I remember walking into the living room and noticing how still everything was. Even the air felt arranged. Like she'd fluffed the pillows one last time, so I wouldn't know something was missing right away. But I did. I noticed every little detail. The charger missing from her side of the bed. The jacket that always hung on the second hook by the door gone. The half-used lavender candle she always said she'd finish eventually gone. Even the tea she kept in the tin marked Marlene's was gone, but the tin was still there. Empty. Clean. She didn't leave a note. Not even a text. But everything she didn't say was spelled out in subtraction. People talk about heartbreak like it's loud. Sudden. Some kind of emotional explosion. But this? This was like walking into a house that looked untouched, only to realize the floor plan has changed. I didn't sleep that night. Not even by mistake. My body stayed awake even when I closed my eyes. And I kept seeing her, not the version I married. Not even the version that left. But something in between. The version that started disappearing quietly over time. The one who started giving one-word answers. The one who listened to her music with headphones in, even when the house was silent. The one who used to wait for me to sit beside her before starting a show, and then stopped waiting altogether. I didn't recognize it then. Now it's all I can see. I sat on the floor in front of the couch and tried to replay every moment where I might have saved this. But there were too many, and none of them were clear. Like trying to solve a puzzle after half the pieces have already been thrown out. And still, the plant. That stupid plant. I found myself Googling it the next morning. Just to know the name. Just to claim some part of it. Turns out it's called a Dracaena marginata. Low maintenance. Doesn't need much attention. Survives in low light. It made me sick to realize she kept something that needed less than I did. I wish I could say I got angry. That I packed her things. That I called someone, anyone, to scream into the phone about what had just happened. But all I did was pick up her empty tea tin and put it back in the cupboard. Right where it used to be. Like that would somehow hold the shape of her just a little longer. I went to breakfast with Owen that Sunday. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what else to do. Sitting in the house was like waiting for someone to wake up who was never going to. So I texted him, "You around tomorrow morning?" He replied with a thumbs up and the name of a diner we used to go to back in college. Maggie's on 6th Place hasn't changed in 15 years. Same sticky syrup bottles. Same burnt coffee. Same waitress who still calls everyone Han. We sat across from each other in a booth too small for 2 grown men. He ordered eggs. I didn't order anything. Just asked for water. He noticed. Not eating. Not hungry. Since when? I didn't answer. Just stirred the water with my straw like that made it useful. He didn't push. Owen's not the pushing type. He talks in safe zones, sports, traffic, movies with explosions. But this time, after a long silence, he said something that didn't match his usual script. "You good, man?" The words sat there between us. He said it like he already knew the answer. Like asking it made it easier to ignore the truth. I didn't know how to respond. So I said something completely untrue. "I think she left." He blinked, fork in midair. "What do you mean you think?" I shrugged. "She walked out on Thursday night. Told me not to wait up. Didn't come back." He stared at me like I was telling him a story I read in a magazine. "And she hasn't called?" "Nope." "Is she with someone?" I paused. "Yeah." He looked down at his plate, then back at me. "How long?" "No idea. Probably longer than I realized." Silence again. And then he said it, that thing people say when they don't know what else to say, but they want to offer something that sounds like comfort. "You'll get through it." I didn't respond. Because that sentence? It doesn't land. Not when you're still in it. Not when you're holding the memory of her keys still hanging on the rack like she might come back to grab them. Not when you're picturing her with someone else, and instead of rage, all you feel is absence. He went back to his eggs. I went back to my straw. We sat there another 20 minutes, not really saying anything. I watched people come in, couples mostly. Some laughing. Some on their phones. Some not even talking at all, just eating in rhythm, like they've done this forever. And I wondered how many of them were about to break and didn't even know it yet. Before we left, Owen clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Text me if you need anything." I nodded. Sure. But we both knew I wouldn't. Because what would I even say? "Hey man, do you know what it feels like to sit in your own kitchen and realize the silence isn't peaceful anymore? It's personal? Do you know what it's like to forget what your wife's last smile looked like? Not because you didn't care, but because it stopped showing up in the first place?" He wouldn't know, and I wouldn't say it. So I drove home, the same way I always do. Only now, when I opened the front door, the house didn't greet me. It tolerated me. And I think that's what hurts the most. Sunday, 9:42 a.m. I started with the closet. Not the one in the hallway. Ours. The master bedroom. Her side smelled like cedar and fabric softener. There was an old receipt from a nail salon in one of the jacket pockets. November 18th. That date didn't mean anything. I threw it out anyway. I stacked her sweaters. Folded 2. Crumpled 1. Folded again. I paused on the green one. She wore that on our last trip to Asheville. I touched the sleeve, then dropped it into the donation bag without thinking. 10:23 a.m. I moved to the bathroom. I counted her products. 2 bottles of shampoo. 1 half-use conditioner. Dry shampoo. 4 kinds of lotion. 2 razors. A perfume bottle with barely anything left. I didn't smell it. I thought I might. I didn't. I put it all into a box labeled Marlene. Then I peeled the label off and threw it away. 11:07 a.m. The kitchen. 2 mugs she always used, one with a chip, one with a tiny cactus on it. I kept them both. Wasn't sure why. Her tea tin was still in the cupboard. Still empty. I left it there. 12:40 p.m. I dusted the bookshelf. Found a ticket stub from a concert we never went to. She bought it for us. I made an excuse last minute. Something with work. She went alone. Or maybe not. I shredded it. 2:14 p.m. I vacuumed. The lines on the carpet made me feel like I was doing something right. Then I rearranged the furniture, moved the couch an inch forward, the coffee table slightly left. Didn't like it. Put it all back. 3:09 p.m. Laundry. Her clothes still smelled like her. I didn't cry. But I did take one of her t-shirts and fold it slower than the rest. Put it at the bottom of the drawer instead of in the bag. That didn't feel like weakness. It felt like remembering. 4:33 p.m. Trash bags by the door. Donation boxes in the garage. Bed made. Kitchen spotless. Bathroom shelf empty. The house looked manageable. But it felt louder. Like everything had been rearranged around the shape she left behind. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel clean. I just stood in the hallway, staring at the quietest version of my life so far. No yelling. No plates broken. No music. No notes. No goodbye. Just a house full of nothing wearing the skin of something. I left the house at 6:10 a.m. No plan. Just keys, wallet, a jacket I hadn't worn since last fall, and a gas tank half full. I told myself I wouldn't drive far. Just get some air. Clear my head. But the freeway pulled me east without asking. Before I realized it, I was halfway to Cold Hollow, a place we used to go when the weather turned. She liked the lake there. Said it was shaped like a question mark. I hadn't been back since 2019. The town looked the same, but smaller. That happens when the person you shared it with isn't there to point things out. The coffee shop she loved was still open. Same chalkboard sign out front. Same faded wooden chairs. I parked across the street and didn't get out. I watched couples walk in and out. A father with his daughter. A woman in a green raincoat, not her, but close enough to notice. I sat there 20 minutes, then drove past the town center without stopping. Further up the road, there's a scenic turnout that overlooks the valley. We had a photo taken there once. I think she posted it, but I never asked her for a copy. It wasn't a great picture. We both looked windblown and tired, but we were happy that day. Or at least I thought we were. I pulled over, got out, stood there. Nothing looked like it used to. Not the trees, not the hills, not the sky. I waited to feel something. Nostalgia, sadness, peace, anything. I felt nothing. A man walked by with a dog and nodded politely. I nodded back. He kept going. For a second, I wondered if he looked at me the way I felt, like I was pretending to be part of the moment, but couldn't quite fit inside it. I sat on the edge of the wooden rail and stared out for a long time. Tried to remember our conversations. What we talked about on the drive up here. Whether she held my hand on that trip. Whether we stopped for gas or snacks or silence. I couldn't recall any of it. It scared me how quickly things fade. By noon, I was driving again. No music. No destination. Just roads. I ended up eating lunch at a diner 2 towns over. Sat at the counter. Ordered a grilled cheese and fries. The waitress didn't ask how I was. She just smiled and filled my water twice. That felt like kindness. Or maybe routine. There were photos on the wall of people I didn't know. Kids' drawings framed beside newspaper clippings. One of them read, "Local couple celebrates 50 years." I stared at that headline for a long time. Tried to imagine reaching 50 years with someone, and whether they still look at each other like they used to. I couldn't picture it anymore. On the drive back, it started raining. Just a mist at first, then heavier. I rolled the window down halfway. Let it sting my face a little. It felt like proof I still existed. When I pulled into my driveway around 4 p.m., everything looked normal again. But nothing recognized me. Not the porch. Not the front door. Not the key in my hand. The house was still mine, but I didn't belong in it. It happened late. Around 11:40 p.m. I was lying on the couch, not asleep but not awake either, just somewhere in between. The TV was on but muted, a documentary about architecture. I wasn't watching it, just letting the light move across the ceiling. The room had taken on that strange, gray-blue tone everything gets when you leave the TV on without paying attention. That's when the vibration buzzed through the table. I sat up, confused, because no one had texted me all day. And somehow, I knew it was her before I even looked. Not because of some sixth sense. Just because who else would it be? It was a short message. 3 sentences. Nothing emotional. Nothing dramatic. Just, I left a folder in the back of the filing cabinet. It has the info from the insurance company and the contacts for the storage unit. You might need it. No greeting. No punctuation at the end. No, hope you're okay, or sorry about how I left. Just information. Clean, precise, impersonal. I stared at it for a full minute before locking my phone and setting it face down. I didn't respond. I couldn't figure out what I'd even say if I tried. Thank you. I found it? Why now? The moment didn't hurt. It didn't ignite rage or tears. It just added weight. Like someone had come into the room and placed a box on my chest without a word, and I had no choice but to hold it. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I went into the spare room. The one we used for paperwork and overflow and things that didn't fit in the regular rhythm of our lives. The filing cabinet was buried under a pile of broken-down moving boxes and old luggage. I hadn't opened it in maybe 3 years. I pulled the drawer slowly, and sure enough, behind the folders with taxes and manuals and warranty slips, there was a plain blue folder with a sticky note on the front that just said storage. Inside were printed documents, contact numbers, passwords scribbled in the margins, and a note, not handwritten, just typed on a half sheet of paper. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't even personal. It was a breakdown of bills she'd prepaid, items she'd moved out, and one line at the end. Let me know if anything's missing. I sat on the floor right there in the hallway and read it 3 times. Not because the information was unclear, but because I was searching for something between the lines. A hidden message. A feeling. Anything. But there was nothing to decode. Just logistics. Like closing out a shared business account. What haunted me most wasn't the text itself. It was the effort. She had taken the time to type something. Print it. Label it. And place it in a spot she knew I'd find. That required care. And yet, somehow, it was the coldest thing I'd ever read. It made me wonder if she had cried at all. If walking away had cost her anything. Or if she'd been planning this exit so long. She'd already mourned it and moved on. I thought about texting her back. I typed something out. I got the folder. Thanks. Then deleted it. Rewrote it. You didn't have to do that. Deleted that too. I kept doing it for nearly 15 minutes until I finally locked my phone and tossed it across the bed. That night, I didn't try to sleep. I just sat in the hallway, with the open filing cabinet drawer and that blue folder on my lap, wondering how a person could disappear so quietly, yet still manage to leave behind instructions on how to keep moving without them. And the worst part? I followed them. The phone call came while I was washing dishes. It was one of those numbers you don't recognize, local area code, but not saved. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Maybe I thought it was her. Maybe I didn't think anything at all. Hello. The voice on the other end wasn't hers. It was male. Friendly. Almost too casual. Hi. Curtis, right? I hesitated. Yeah, who's this? This is Will. You don't know me, but, I'm friends with Marlene. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice flat. Okay. I just figured you should know she's staying at my place. In the guest room. Temporarily. There was silence. I waited for more. An explanation. A reason. Anything. He continued, too easily. She didn't want me to call. Said it was better if she handled things herself. But honestly, man, it's awkward for everyone. I thought if we just cleared the air, it'd be easier. I stared at the sink. Water still running. Plate in my hand. I said, You live in Brookmere? Yeah. On Sloane Avenue. I knew that street. We'd been to a neighborhood garage sale there 3 summers ago. She bought a worn-out bench and said she'd repaint it. She never did. I asked, You too? How long has this been happening? There was a pause. A real one this time. I don't think it's my place to answer that. Of course it isn't, I said, louder than I meant to. He backtracked. I'm not trying to stir anything up. I just didn't want you hearing from someone else, you know? Gossip travels. Small town. You know how it is. I didn't respond. Then he said something that stuck. She talks about you like you're still her husband. That sentence landed like a dropped glass. It didn't make sense. Didn't belong. What does that mean? I mean, she doesn't talk bad about you. She says it's complicated. She says you're a good man. Just, I don't know, distant. I almost laughed. Distant? I was the one waiting in the kitchen every night. I was the one asking her to sit down and talk. I was the one who kept our routines alive when she stopped participating. But I didn't say any of that. I just turned off the faucet and said, Tell her she doesn't need to send people to clean up for her. Will cleared his throat. I'm not cleaning up. I thought it might help. It doesn't. Another pause. Well, all right. I'll let you go. Yeah. He hung up. I stood there, hands wet, staring at the bubbles in the sink like they had answers. So that's where she was. Sloane Avenue. Guest room. That's what she called this now. Complicated. And I realized, for the first time, she might already have her version of this story. One where she tried. One where I faded first. One where she had no choice. And now? Now there was someone else helping shape that story. Someone who had no idea who we were, how we got here, or what got lost along the way. But he had a guest room. And that was enough. It was a Tuesday when I finally stepped back into the bedroom with a trash bag in one hand and a mug in the other. The mug was hers, the one with the chipped rim and the cactus. I almost threw it out a dozen times. But today, I just set it on the dresser and left it there. No ceremony. No meaning. It was just a mug again. I didn't keep the folder. I shredded the papers, closed the cabinet, and didn't think about the storage unit. I figured if there was anything in there worth keeping, she would have taken it. And if she didn't, maybe it wasn't worth remembering. I didn't respond to her text, or the one she sent a week later that simply said, Just checking in. That message sat there, unopened. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need to check in. I already knew where I was. By the end of that week, I repainted the hallway. Took the photos down. Not out of spite, just to see how the walls looked without us on them. Turns out, they looked fine. Clean. New. That Sunday, I drove to the lake alone. Not the one we used to visit, a different one. Smaller. Quieter. I sat on a bench near the water with a sandwich and a notepad, and I wrote something for the first time in years. Nothing deep. Just a list of things I wanted to try before winter. None of them included her. On the drive home, I played a record she never liked. Sang along to the parts one used to skip. Rolled the windows down, even though it was chilly. I stopped for coffee at a shop we'd never been to, and they got my name wrong on the cup. It said Carlos. I didn't correct it. Somehow, it made me smile. That night, I went to sleep in the middle of the bed. I didn't leave a space for anyone. I didn't check my phone. I didn't look toward the door. I just lay there, breathing steady and full. And when I woke up the next morning, the house didn't feel empty. It felt mine. The sky didn't break open with sunlight. There was no thunderous revelation, no emotional speech. But there was a little breeze through the window, a scent of something baking in a neighbor's oven, and a strange feeling in my chest I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the kind that erases the past, just the kind that makes room for something else. And that was enough.